Is Pacific Rim in the same universe as Godzilla? This is a question that I'm sure a lot of people are asking, us included, and let's try to explore that today. So in this picture by Kaiju King, we can see Godzilla facing off against a Jaeger. He does seem to look a lot bigger in this picture based on perspective. Gypsy Danger, the popular Jaeger from the Pacific Rim movie, is about 260 feet high, or 270 feet, I think it's 260 feet, and weighs almost 2,000 tons. 2019's legendary Godzilla is now, he went from 355 feet to 393 feet, and is now 99,634 tons. He's almost 100,000 tons. They would have to considerably make bigger machines just to face off this thing, or more powerful machines. But anyways, to answer the question as to whether or not Pacific Rim is in the same universe as Godzilla, the answer is simply no, officially, because officially they aren't, but they could be. They both have that Hollow Earth theory going on where kaiju come from and they've introduced it to the monsterverse, or it's always been there. Obviously, they both have kaiju, daikaiju, that other people have to fight. There's battles with the kaiju, and the kaiju come from the sea and rampage on land. And if Kong is any indication of this, with monsters being in movies and then them connecting the universes, I mean, Kong already was before anyway, so that's why they did that. But technically, almost any monster movie with daikaiju in it can be connected or in the same universe, because Godzilla is not the only kaiju in this movie. They have introduced or made it apparent, even in the newer versions of the movies, that there are other kaiju out there, just like they did with the older movies where there's Monster Island and a place like Skull Island where monsters come from or where they reside. And also, they're both by Legendary Pictures and Warner Brothers, the production company. So it's like everything points to this, and that's why people have been asking, and almost to the point of harassment, it seems, but in a good way, if there's ever going to be a crossover between these movies. They very well could exist in the same universe. Now, the reason why I think it wouldn't work is because of the Jaegers. Godzilla is his own franchise, and if there was to be a crossover, and even if they are in the same universe, and I'll talk about that later, it wouldn't be in the same time period. I know that a lot of things suggest in the movies that this is around the same time period that this video was created, or at least in this little era here, but they wouldn't exist together. If anything, Pacific Rim exists in a different dimension or a parallel universe where humans were smarter and had better technology and what have you. Because if they were to make a movie or a crossover like this to allow there to be Godzilla and the kaiju and the Jaegers all mixed up together, then it would steal the shine from Godzilla and the kaiju. Because if you remember correctly, Pacific Rim was about beating up the kaiju. Now, Godzilla would be lumped into that. It would be like Monster Hunter on steroids. Godzilla would be one of those many kaiju that they would see as a threat. But sooner or later, they would find out that he actually helps to fight the other kaiju and to keep them in check. But he would still be a threat. He would still be dangerous. But let's say that the military and the government decide not to fight Godzilla and to fight alongside him. He no longer would be the star of the show. The franchise would be watered down, to say the least, and not to mention it would be boring because Godzilla would just annihilate all these kaiju. For some reason, the kaiju in Pacific Rim in comparison to the kaiju in the Monsterverse just seem a lot weaker. Of course, the Jaegers can handle them, but the Monsterverse kaiju were a little bit bulkier and beefier and more formidable. So it would just mess things up. I think they should explore that in a comic if they haven't done so already. They may even allude to it in the anime series that they're going to do for Pacific Rim, but as for a whole movie concept of them crossing over, it probably wouldn't work unless they beef up the kaiju and they dial back the Jaegers. Now, when I talked about the future and a different dimension and stuff, there are concepts that the Pacific Rim universe could take place in the future of Godzilla's universe. Or maybe it's the same universe, they share the universe, but the Jaegers are way into the future, where they no longer rely on Godzilla, because maybe they would realize that, as I said before in other videos, that Godzilla can't be everywhere at once. And even in the end credits for Godzilla King of the Monsters 2019, it said that Godzilla is trying to fight to keep the other kaiju in check. And while Godzilla's on one side of the globe, he can't be on the other at the same time. So while he's fighting Slattern or somebody else on the one side of the globe, humans are being terrorized and killed on the other. So they would still have to find a way to make some kind of technology to protect themselves if Godzilla is ever decommissioned, or if he something happens to him or he's preoccupied. So that would be way into the future, and it's possible that the waste, that the energy that these kaiju produce, that's the byproduct of them roaming around free, could be the very thing that could aid in the production of this technology to make these Jaegers. Not to mention Skull Island and the rumors of them building some biomechanic thing that could be the start to these big mechanoids that we'll see later on. That's for another video. There's so many things to glean from this. So it is a fun concept, and I think it's totally possible they could be in the same universe. However, I don't see them crossing over, at least not on the mainstream movie for Godzilla from Legendary Pictures, because it would just steal too much from Godzilla. I think it would be received the way that AVP was received, and we don't want that. Legendary Pictures would have to be very cautious in the way they tread that territory. I think the most we can hope for is that this is a parallel universe. And it's possible that at some point maybe Godzilla did exist, or he does exist, but this is way into the future where kaiju have evolved, or just different kaiju exist altogether. Anyways, what do you guys think about this? Do you think that Godzilla could be in the same universe as Pacific Rim? And what would happen? We'll talk about that in another video too, but what would happen if they weren't in the same universe and then we took Godzilla and put him into the Pacific Rim universe? What do you think would take place? Let us know in the comments, and thanks so much for watching. This has been Altiori. You ask, we answer.